So can you take us back to when you first thought of let's do a music game about the Beatles and like when did that road start?
Well, it's a long story, actually. It goes way back to the very end of 2006. My boss is a guy named Van Toffler, who is the president of the music group at MTV. And it turns out that he is a family friend of the Harrisons, of George Harrison's widow, Olivia Harrison, and son, Danny Harrison. And Van was vacationing on some Caribbean island where the Harrisons were also vacationing, and they were having dinner one night. And apparently Van remarked that he hadn't slept well the night before, and Danny Harrison commented, well, actually he hadn't slept much the night before either because he had been up all night playing Guitar Hero. And Van's response was, oh, well, actually MTV just bought Harmonix, the company that developed Guitar Hero. And apparently Danny's response was, the next game those guys have to make has to include all the instruments, and it has to be called Rock Band. And of course that was exactly the game we were working on, but behind closed doors we hadn't announced it yet. And so Van's reaction was, Danny, I think you should meet Alex. And he introduced us, and a few months later we finally met in person, and just not to talk about a Beatles game, just to get to know each other. But pretty early on in those conversations, of course, the obvious idea came up, which is, wow, wouldn't it be incredible to do a game based entirely on the music of the Beatles. And it seemed almost impossible an idea at that time, but it was something we had to pursue. And Danny and his mom Olivia very graciously introduced us to Apple Corps, the Beatles company, and the Apple Corps management very quickly brought together all of the what we call the shareholders, meaning Sir Paul and Ringo and Olivia and Yoko Ono Lennon, to begin a conversation about what this game might be. And from there it was really more than a year to kind of advance the idea and answer some questions till we finally all agreed to move forward together.
It has the name Rock Band in it, but how would you say that it differs from Rock Band? Obviously the music, but is there anything else that fans will think is different?
Well, I mean, of course, musically, it's the Beatles. It's the first time this music is being released in an interactive form. But from a gameplay standpoint, there are a few significant differences. First of all, we're introducing a major new gameplay feature in the Beatles Rock Band, which is harmony singing, which is something that hasn't been done before in music games. But for a game about the Beatles, it was vitally important because harmonic singing is a crucial part of their sound. And so in the Beatles Rock Band, for the first time, up to 3 people will be able to sing together and sing harmony parts. And it's been amazing to watch over the course of the development of this project. People get drawn to that aspect of play that, most people have never tried singing in harmony together, and it's kind of challenging, and they don't sound great at first, but then they come in for a play test, and then they practice with the vocal trainer for a little while, and an hour after they've been playing with it, all of a sudden people are singing in harmony together for the first time in their lives. So this is an amazing thing to watch, and one aspect of this game that we're very excited to see roll out into the world. Some other important new aspects of this game compared to the previous Rock Band titles. One is the visual presentation. Of course, the characters are the Beatles, and they evolve in the way that they did visually over the course of their career. But in the early part of their career, they were a touring band, and so we have them on stage performing at these iconic venues like Cavern Club or Shea Stadium or Ed Sullivan Theater. But in the latter part of their career, they were just recording in the studio and stopped performing. So the visual metaphor we've used in the past of a band on stage in front of a screaming crowd didn't make sense there. So that gave us an opportunity to invent this new idea that we call dreamscapes, which is when the band is, for this latter half of the music, they start out performing in the studio, but then the studio walls disappear and they're transported to these kind of imaginary environments that are related to the song and the lyrics of the music and whatnot. So just from a standpoint of sheer visual presentation, this is very new creative terrain, and I think something very different from the traditional Rock Band. And finally, it's worth pointing out that there's a very deep story mode in the Beatles Rock Band that's kind of focused on their, the story of them and their lives as it unfolded over this period of 7 or 8 years that they were together. So there's a deep dive into that aspect of things with unlockable photos and other media and memorabilia about the band that I think, fans of the Beatles will find really exciting.
So is that a main focus for you as well, to sort of introduce people who may not have played a game ever, but are Beatles fans, that they should pick this up as well?
Yeah, for us there are actually 2 very different goals related for this project. One is for, there are tens of millions of passionate Beatles fans out there in the world, but maybe some of them have never played a music game at all. So for them, what we're trying to do is, let people who already know and love this music re-experience this music in a new way and get inside of it and discover some things about the music that they've never heard before, even though they've been listening to this music and loving it their whole lives. The flip side of that is younger people who are maybe already actively playing music games and love music games, but who know of the Beatles, but who don't necessarily know, it's not close to them, they don't know the music intimately yet. We're giving an opportunity to them to essentially experience the Beatles for the first time, but in the most immersive way possible. So I think the game is for both audiences.
Has there been a challenge working with the recordings, the old recordings and stuff, to implement them in the game?
Yeah, a significant challenge that we hit very early on, which was that Apple Corps made it clear from the beginning that if we were going to do this, we should do it. We should create a game that covers not just the latter material, but the whole Beatles career. And of course, their earliest material, the first third or more of their catalog, predated modern multi-track recording techniques. So for a lot of that material, you have all the instruments, the guitar and drums and bass, all printed onto one track of tape. And for our games, that presents a problem because we have audio interactivity for all the different instruments. Say if the bass and drummer is playing well, but the guitar misses a note, you need the guitar audio to drop out. And if all the audio is recorded onto one track of tape, you can't do that. And so Apple introduced us very early on to Giles Martin, who's the son of Sir George Martin, and he and Paul Hicks and their engineers at Abbey Road Studios worked very closely with us, and they did an incredible job at essentially developing new techniques and new technologies to create custom filters to isolate the audio of the different instruments from each other so that we could have that audio interactivity. And it's basically technology that did not exist in the world before this project that we had to create in order to enable the possibility of this project. So there have been many challenges like that along the way.
Speaking of the instruments, perhaps we could show us one of
Sure.
here. That has to be a main thing as well to get the instruments right.
Yeah, well, this is an opportunity for the Beatles superfan who wants to have the complete experience. The game, I should point out quickly, the game is compatible with all prior hardware, so all prior Rock Band 1 and Rock Band 2 hardware, all Guitar Hero instruments. You can sing the game using SingStar peripherals on the PS3 or Lips microphones, on the Xbox 360. So you don't need to buy the Beatles hardware, but if you're the superfan who really wants to have the complete experience, we've made a set of Beatles peripherals which are really the fanciest, the highest end peripherals we've ever made for any music game. And here's, Paul's classic Hofner bass, which you can see, which is actually a little bit larger scale than people are used to in game peripherals, is quite large. And the look and fit and finish of these is really quite nice. There's also, let me grab a couple more here for you. 2 guitars. Here we have Rickenbacker 325, which was one of John's classic guitars. And here we have a Gretsch Duojet, which was one of George's favorite guitars. And again, these are, if you look at the chrome details and the other details on these are the nicest instruments that we've made, and really accurate replicas of the original instruments.
Is this like the level that we can expect from future Rock Band peripherals?
Maybe so. I mean, I can't speak to that directly, but I can say that these are, this is definitely a level up from the quality of instruments that we've released in the past, and we're really proud of them.
Let's hope we don't break them too fast.
No, although I expect these are going to get quite a workout this holiday.
I guess you've wrapped up everything. It's 999, right?
Yeah, the game is done now, so now we're just a few weeks away from launching the game and releasing it into the world on September 9th, and we're really excited about it.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.